Everyone believed I had made a perfect match. My husband was attractive and wealthy, my mother-in-law seemed kind-hearted, and my sister-in-law appeared gentle. I never had to manage the household chores. Yet, what they didn't see was the truth behind this facade. My charming and affluent husband had numerous mistresses. The supposedly kind mother-in-law scolded and beat me, and the gentle sister-in-law constantly gave me the cold shoulder. This time, I've been granted a chance to start over. As for this miserable family, anyone who desires to marry into it can take my place. I won't. That so-called perfect husband, he's a criminal, and I'll see to it that he ends up behind bars. The sweet mother-in-law, I'll provoke her until she's enraged beyond control. And the gentle sister-in-law, she'll face the consequences of her actions. In this new life, I'll be true to myself. Men flirt. Can't you be more forgiving? These dismissive words came from my husband, Henry. At that moment, he was peeling off his shirt, which was smudged with lipstick, and carelessly tossed it onto my head before heading to the shower. Holding the stained garment, I stepped out of the room and found my mother-in-law waiting for me. Her usual sweet demeanor vanished as she sneered, "You can't even bear a child or keep your husband. I have no idea why Henry married you." As my sister-in-law walked by and overheard her mother's remarks, she shot me a disdainful look before walking off. Suddenly, my mother-in-law slapped me across the face, saying, "I'm talking to you. Where are you looking? You're so useless. It's a waste of effort to even hit you." Lowering my head, I didn't dare to respond. When I first joined this family, things weren't like this. But over the past 2 years, my inability to conceive had worsened the situation. Despite trying to defend myself, I was only met with more insults and violence. I even attempted to get a divorce. But as a housewife with no income, I couldn't even scrape together 100 ween, let alone rent an apartment or find work. When I turned to my biological parents for help, they dismissed my claims. They even warned me that if I pursued a divorce, they'd disown me. My younger sister went as far as to say that if she had been the one to marry Henry, the outcome would have been entirely different. One night, after shedding tears on the bed, Henry yelled, "You're so annoying!" Moments later, his phone buzzed with a message. He glanced at it, grabbed his clothes, and left the room without a word. As he headed out, I noticed the message started with "husband" and was sent from a number I recognized, my younger sister's. I had saved her number as the first contact in my phone. Watching Henry rush out, I finally made a decision. I would follow him. I trailed his car to the entrance of a newly built community. A woman ran out to meet him, wrapping her arms around him and kissing him passionately. Though I couldn't hear their voices from afar, the bright lights illuminated the woman's face. It was my own sister, Diana. As they embraced, Diana turned and gave me a smug, taunting smile, as if she wanted me to see it all. Henry, fully aware I was watching, seemed entirely indifferent. That smile pushed me to open the car door, ready to confront them. But years of mistreatment had left me hesitant. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Diana. "Sister, brother-in-law isn't coming home tonight." I screamed in frustration and collapsed beside the car. The memory of Henry's promise, "I'll love you forever," felt fresh in my mind, yet here he was, holding someone else, while I, his lawful wife, didn't even have the courage to demand an explanation. After crying, I forced myself to act like nothing had happened and sat back in the car. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror. My disheveled hair, cheap-looking clothes, and pale, neglected face stared back at me. I laughed bitterly at my situation. I had once been the pride of my peers. In primary and secondary school, I was always at the top of my class. I ranked first in the city's college entrance exams and earned a place at the most prestigious university. During college, I excelled academically, even receiving an offer to continue my studies. I also secured job offers from renowned companies, including the globally recognized Lynn Group. Yet, blinded by love, I chose Henry instead. "Stay with me. I'll take care of you," he had said, and I naively believed him. Becoming his wife, I had effectively thrown away my bright future. That decision now felt like a bullet, one I had fired into my own head. My phone buzzed again, this time with an audio clip from Diana. In the recording, her voice was accompanied by Henry's. "Tell me, who do you love most?" Diana asked. "You, of course," Henry replied. "What about my sister?" Diana pressed. "At first, I admired her unattainable aura," Henry said coldly. "But now, she's just a frumpy woman. Even if she were naked, I wouldn't be interested. Besides, Dating her was just a bet I made with my roommates, and I won. Beneath the audio clip, there was a line of text. Brother Henry and I spent the night together on the day you got married. Unable to endure the sight any longer, I started the car and drove off. Suddenly, a speeding car came out of nowhere and collided with me. The driver didn't even step out, but drove away without hesitation. Everything around me became blurry, and eventually, I lost consciousness. Here's 1 million yuan. Take it and stay away from my son. The person standing arrogantly before me was Grace, my former mother-in-law. No, she had been my mother-in-law in my previous life. Beside her sat my younger sister, Deanna, who had slept with my husband on the night of my wedding. Yes, I had been reincarnated, and this scene mirrored the moment in my past life when Grace tried to pay me off to leave her son. Back then, I had refused, naively believing Henry would love me forever. Pathetic man, leave, I thought to myself, determined to take a different approach this time. I pretended to reject the check, saying, Henry is the love of my life. You'll need to offer more. Diana's shocked expression was almost comical. To her, I had always been weak, too scared to fight back even when struck in the face. Grace scoffed. 2 million yuan to end things with my son for good. Recognizing the opportunity, I replied, Deal. Once the money's in my account, I'll stay out of his life forever. But make sure your son doesn't come looking for me either. Grace, visibly irritated, scribbled out a new check and flung it onto the table. Fine, but don't take the money and then come crawling back. Wait, I interrupted as she began to rise. Please take the check back. Before she could react with anger, I continued, I prefer bank transfers or cash. Also, I'll need a legal document, a gift contract, to ensure you won't try to reclaim it later. Grace was fuming. Do you think our family can't afford 2 million yuan? The woman before me was like a walking gold mine, so I played it safe. Of course not. To you, this is a trivial sum, but for me, it's life-changing. Naturally, I need to be cautious. Fine, she snapped, angrier than ever. Tomorrow, same place. I'll bring our lawyer. Thank you, I said, handing back the check with a polite smile. Take care. Diana glared at me accusingly. Sister, how can you do this to Henry? She hurried after Grace, leaving me to focus on my phone. A message popped up. Congratulations, Miss Elizabeth, on passing the Lin Group interview. We are pleased to welcome you as part of our team. Please report next Monday. In my previous life, I had turned down this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to marry Henry. That mistake taught me that relying on others is futile. Only self-reliance matters. This time I wouldn't repeat it. Thank you, I replied to the message. I'll be there on Monday. As I was about to put my phone away, I noticed the contact of an old friend, Rose. Rose and I had been classmates through school and college, and had even promised to be each other's bridesmaids. But after I started dating Henry, he poisoned my mind against her, and our friendship faded. 1 year into my marriage, Henry drunkenly confessed that Rose had seen through him, so he deliberately smeared her reputation. Staring at her name on my screen, I hesitated. I didn't have the courage to reach out, until someone accidentally bumped into me and my finger dialed her number. There was silence on the other end before I nervously said, Hello, Rose. After a long pause, she sighed, Forget it. Where are you? I'll come to you. Hearing her voice brought me to tears. A true friend, I realized, is someone who forgives your foolishness when you finally wake up and reach out. The next day, I waited for 2 hours with my lawyer before Grace and Diana arrived. Grace might be difficult, but I had all the patience in the world when dealing with money. When the 2 million yuan appeared in my account, and I held the signed gift contract in hand, I couldn't have been happier. As they left, Diana muttered under her breath, Sister, Henry is mine now. Don't regret it. Regret? There was none. That money was enough to buy a small apartment in the city center. I smiled at my newfound freedom as I glanced at my bank account. The door's wind chimes jingled, and Henry entered. Mom, I can handle my affairs. How could you humiliate Elizabeth like this? He took my hand, glaring at his mother. Diana, looking flustered, pulled out a recording device. Brother Henry, it was Sister who gave you up voluntarily. My voice played from the device. Henry is the love of my life. You'll need to offer more. Henry stared at me in disbelief. Elizabeth, how could you change so much? You said we'd build a life together and stand against my family. I coughed and stepped back. Promises are made with sincerity, but life offers no guarantees. Look at me, I've already broken mine. Elizabeth, Henry said, gripping my hand tightly, I'll dedicate my entire life to keeping my promise. Diana, unable to watch any longer, tugged at Henry's sleeve with a pitiful expression. Sister has already let you go. Why can't you look at someone else? Grace, who had finally lost her patience, grabbed Henry and dragged him away, muttering, Why would you even want to marry a woman who chose money over you? I'm here. Elizabeth will never step foot in the Henry household again, declared Grace, her voice fading as she scolded her son. Aren't you going after them? I asked Diana, who remained standing there. Dropping her facade, Diana snapped, Elizabeth, now that you've given up Brother Henry, don't try to interfere with him anymore. He will fall in love with me, and I'll be the one to marry him. Good luck, I replied sincerely. Deep down, I hoped Diana would achieve what she wanted. The following day, I started in my job at the Lynn Group. Alice, the team leader of the first copywriting team, introduced me to the company before showing me to my desk. That's when I noticed someone familiar, Sophia, my sister-in-law from my past life, who had always appeared kind to others. In my previous life, Sophia already knew about me when I married Henry. Everyone around Henry underwent scrutiny by the Henry family, and Sophia was in charge of these investigations. I had once stumbled upon my own investigation file while cleaning the house after marriage. Back then, I foolishly believed I could change the Henry family. I remembered that moment vividly. While I was reading the file, Sophia had stood outside the door, watching me. When I finished, she sneered, If someone gets into our circle, it means they have something valuable to offer. Elizabeth, what do you think your greatest asset is? Without waiting for an answer, she walked away. 2 years later, I understood her words. My only advantage had been my ability to temporarily make Henry settle down. To the Henry family, I was nothing more than a potential womb. Snapped out of my thoughts, I was called to Director Evelyn's office. On her desk lay my resume and a report. Without hesitation, she asked, Do you know President Lucas? I answered honestly, his younger brother used to be my boyfriend. That explains it, Evelyn murmured before sliding a file toward me. President Lucas specifically requested you to handle this case. Submit the preliminary plan with Team 1 by next Monday. Acknowledging her authority, I accepted the task without hesitation. Alice, however, viewed me as someone who only got the job through connections. She made her disdain clear. Team leader Alice, I've summarized the files you requested, I informed her. She barely glanced at them, tossing the documents onto her desk without care. Got it, she muttered dismissively. Holding back my frustration, I left her workstation. During a meeting the next week, Director Evelyn presented the preliminary plan for the collaboration with the Henry Group. Midway, I shouted, That's incorrect. All eyes turned to me, including Evelyn's. Numbers have always been my strength, and I knew the data by heart. The figure of 3.5 million has been altered to 33.5 million, I explained. Director Evelyn picked up the report, confirming the discrepancy. What's going on? She demanded, glaring at Alice. Alice retrieved her copy of the summary report and handed it over. The amount in her version was 33.5 million. Slamming the report shut, Evelyn ordered, Stop the meeting. Alice, Elizabeth, come to my office. As I followed Evelyn out, Alice bumped into me, breaking the heel of my shoe. I stumbled and fell directly into Evelyn, drawing the attention of nearby onlookers. Helping me up, Evelyn glanced at my broken heels and remarked, If the shoes don't fit, replace them. Thank you, I responded, while Alice begrudgingly kept quiet under Evelyn's sharp gaze. In her office, Evelyn confronted Alice. Why did you alter the total amount? Alice, caught off guard, denied it. The figure Elizabeth provided was 33.5 million. You saw the report yourself. Evelyn pulled another report from her drawer. I reviewed the original report before you did. The amount was 3.5 million. I held off pointing it out earlier to see who tampered with it. Alice continued to deny any wrongdoing. It wasn't me, Director, she insisted. I had anticipated sabotage from the moment Evelyn assigned me this task. That's why I kept backups of all my work and emailed them to Evelyn in advance. Evelyn, known for her intolerance of errors, wouldn't overlook this. I had learned about her perfectionism by overhearing Sophia in my past life. Evelyn's tone turned icy. Alice, you're fired. The difference between 3.5 million and 33.5 million isn't just a small error. No company, especially one as prestigious as the Lynn Group, can allow such negligence. Please don't fire me. I have a child who just had an accident at home, and my mother is bedridden. I'm begging you, Alice pleaded as she knelt before Director Evelyn. Despite her tears and desperation, Evelyn showed no mercy. Beep. Evelyn picked up the phone on her desk and called security, signaling them to escort Alice out. Realizing there was no way to salvage the situation, Alice suddenly pulled a utility knife from her pocket and lunged at me, shouting, It's all your fault, Elizabeth! You ruined everything! Go to hell! Bang! A loud crash echoed through the room as Evelyn grabbed a chair and hurled it at Alice, stopping her in her tracks. Calmly, Evelyn took out her phone and called the authorities. Hello, police. Someone is attempting an attack here at the Lynn Group. As a key witness, I accompanied the police to the station. It wasn't until a month later that I learned the real reason Alice had targeted me. The police revealed that Alice had been Diana's closest friend and Henry's ex-girlfriend. Diana had fed Alice the lie that I had seduced Henry, causing their breakup. I was stunned to discover that Alice, who was over a decade older than Henry, had dated him and remained close to Diana. Their tangled connections baffled me, but it didn't matter anymore. I had no interest in being involved in their web of relationships. Coincidentally, that evening, as I approached the entrance of my rented apartment, I spotted Henry. He was clearly drunk, staggering toward me. "Elizabeth, I've missed you so much," he mumbled, before leaning in to kiss me. His hands began wandering under my clothes. Men may be physically stronger, but they have their weaknesses. Without hesitation, I kneed him hard where it hurt the most. Henry groaned and collapsed to the ground, clutching himself in pain. I brushed off my knee, called for security, and dialed the police. "You dare," Henry spat, his voice clear now. It was obvious he hadn't been drunk at all. He had only pretended to be. He was trying to use his fake drunkenness as an excuse to assault me. With the help of the guards, the police soon arrived and took Henry away. Less than 30 minutes later, Miss Grace arrived at the station, accompanied by Diana. "Brother Henry," Diana called out softly, her tone full of concern. As she pushed her hair aside, I noticed a fresh hickey on her neck. It was clear that Henry had just come from Diana's bed. I couldn't help but think, so Diana's performance wasn't enough to satisfy him? Before I could say anything, Miss Grace stormed toward me, her hand raised to slap me. Slap! The sound came not from her hitting me, but from me grabbing her wrist. In my past life, Grace had always maintained a sweet, composed demeanor in public. But now, she was so enraged that she attempted to hit me openly, which showed just how furious she was. However, this time, I wasn't the weak, submissive daughter-in-law anymore. "Mom!" Sophia, who had been my sister-in-law in my previous life, hurriedly rushed over. "Elizabeth works in the copywriting department at the Lynn Group. Let's handle this privately. If this gets out, not only will she lose her job, but she won't even be able to stay in this city." Sophia moved quickly, presenting a pre-prepared letter of agreement. But I stood firm. "Number, I have only one life. Who do I have to fear?" Seeing my defiance, Sophia pulled out her phone and called Lin Hongxing from the Lin Group. The longer the call lasted, the more frustrated her expression became. After ending the call, she turned to me and said, "I underestimated you." It was the first time Sophia had truly acknowledged me. In my previous life, she had always pretended I didn't exist. "Since Director Evelyn vouched for you, I'll respect her opinion," Sophia said coldly. She then walked over to Miss Grace, whispered something in her ear, and escorted her out. Diana trailed behind them, but not without throwing me a contemptuous look. "So much for your supposed capabilities," Diana sneered. "Even now, you're just clinging to rich men. Sister, if you're going to pick trash, at least pick better trash." I knew the Henry family was wealthy and influential. It was no surprise when Henry was released the next day. He even sent me a text message. "Elizabeth, you will belong to me." Ridiculous. In this life, I belonged only to myself. On the same day, I received another message from Diana. "Sister, I'm marrying Brother Henry in a month. Will you come?" A scumbag and a schemer. I wished them a lifetime of happiness. Without replying, I blocked their numbers. The feeling of freedom was exhilarating. With Alice gone, my work improved significantly, and I began building solid friendships with colleagues. One evening, after finishing my tasks and turning off the office lights, I headed home. Just as I stepped out of the building, someone grabbed me from behind, covering my eyes and injecting something into my neck. My struggles were futile, as the drug quickly took effect. When I woke up, I was in a cramped, dimly lit room filled with piles of miscellaneous items. Moonlight streamed through narrow cracks, casting faint light on the floor. Leaning against a bucket, I slowly sat up. "You're awake," a familiar voice said. The sound sent chills down my spine. It was a voice that had once whispered sweet words to me daily. Turning my head, I wasn't surprised to see Henry standing there, unmasked and unashamed. He squatted down, caressing my face with an obsessive expression. "I told you, you will belong to me," he murmured. "You'll behave and you'll suffer less." "Get lost," I spat, kicking at him. Henry caught my tied legs with one hand while using the other to unbuckle his belt. His heavy breathing filled the small room, fueling my rage and despair. I tried to bite Henry, but he simply grabbed my face tightly and pinned my legs down with his right knee. "Give it up, Elizabeth. Tonight you're mine," he sneered. Henry had already unzipped his pants and was now trying to unbutton my clothes. "I'll call the police. I'll make sure you end up in jail," I yelled, struggling against him. But the strength difference between us was too much. I couldn't escape. Henry chuckled darkly. "Go ahead. As long as you're not afraid of me uploading this video online, do whatever you want." It was then that I noticed a camera set up in front of us, its red light indicating it was recording everything. "Don't resist, baby," Henry murmured, his voice dripping with mockery. "I'll be gentle." He kissed me even more aggressively. Suddenly, Henry let out a blood-curdling scream and stumbled back, clutching his arm. His gaze darted to the blade in my hand, then to the cut on his arm. Furious, he retaliated by kicking me hard in the stomach. "You think people from the Lynn group can mess around, but I can't?" he spat. "You'll beg me for mercy by the time I'm done with you." Henry pulled out a small tube, forced it into my mouth, and squeezed the liquid down my throat despite my resistance. "Drink it," he growled, pinching my jaw to ensure I swallowed. Afterward, he took out a bag of white powder from his pocket, poured some onto the ground, and snorted it. "Ah, that's the stuff," he sighed, collapsing in a blissful haze. But he wasn't finished. He called for others outside the room to join him and began acting out his desires in front of me, indifferent to their willingness. Meanwhile, I felt an unbearable itching sensation spread through my body, as if ants were crawling all over me. The liquid he had forced me to drink was taking effect. Desperate to stay conscious, I gripped the blade in my hand and slashed my arm, the pain helping me regain some clarity. Summoning all my willpower, I activated the emergency alert on my phone. I had installed a one-click alarm app after being abducted last time. The alarm not only contacted the police, but also sent a distress message to my friend Rose. As Henry finished his depraved acts, his attention returned to me. "Elizabeth, see how powerful I am now? I'll make you feel good too," he said, approaching me. Knocking the blade from my hand, he pinned me to the ground. "You smell so good," he murmured, tearing at my clothes. Bang! A loud noise interrupted him, but Henry didn't stop. Bang! This time the police burst in, kicking Henry off me and pinning him to the ground. Even then, Henry grinned as though he had no regrets. Rose rushed in after the officers, draping her coat over me and pulling me into a comforting hug. "Don't worry, he'll pay for this," she assured me. As Henry was escorted away, his eyes remained fixed on me, still burning with the same twisted determination. With both evidence and witnesses, Henry was arrested. The day after his arrest, my parents visited me in the hospital. The first words out of my father's mouth were, "Go to the police station and tell them it was all a joke. Ask them to release Henry." What a joke. After their daughter had been assaulted, their first concern was the perpetrator. "Daughter, you know your sister's about to marry Henry. Just let this go. If news of this spreads, it'll ruin your reputation too," my mother added, trying to coax me. "Get out," I said coldly, unwilling to waste energy arguing. My father's temper flared. "How dare you speak to us like that? Is this how you treat your parents?" The fear I used to feel around him was gone. "Are you leaving on your own, or should I call security?" I replied calmly. "Fine, don't bother coming home anymore." "From now on, we have no daughter," my father spat, dragging my mother away. Not once did they ask about my injuries. To them, I was worth less than the family dog. The next day, my parents didn't return, but a new scandal began trending online. The top search was titled "Unspoken Rules at the Lynn Group," accompanied by a photo of me getting into a luxury car. Another trending topic soon followed: Tsinghua University beauty kept as a mistress. This one featured an old photo of me from school. Comments flooded in, accusing me of being a gold digger. With her shabby appearance, how could she afford that bag? She must be a kept woman. Elizabeth dated rich guys in school. Her boyfriend was Henry, the heir to the Henry family. I have photos of them together. The attached images showed Henry and me during our relationship. It was clear to me what the Henry family was doing. They leaked these pictures to shift the narrative. By releasing old photos of me and Henry together, they aimed to paint me as a woman who chased wealth. The public would then believe that I had staged the kidnapping to frame Henry out of greed. Their plan was simple: tarnish my image, absolve themselves, and turn public opinion against me. As the controversy escalated, another bombshell dropped. My parents publicly declared that I had stolen Henry from my sister and announced they were severing all ties with me. I watched the absurd drama unfold on my phone when Rose walked in, holding her own device. She noticed I was already watching the same video. Rose spoke with concern. "The Lynn Group has tried issuing a statement, but the tide of public opinion is completely against you. Turning this around will be very tough." It was only then that I discovered my close friend Rose was actually the only daughter of the Lynn Group's chairman. She had taken her mother's surname. "I know," I replied, shutting off my phone's screen. "Rose, I need to go out for a bit." Rose frowned but said nothing. I knew she was worried about me, but I couldn't avoid this trip. Rose understood my nature. I wouldn't push myself while injured unless it was truly necessary. Finally, she relented. I'll check with the doctor first, and then I'll take you. Outside the hospital, a large crowd had gathered, hoping to gather first-hand information to boost their self-media platforms. Disguising myself carefully, I used a special exit to reach the underground parking lot. Handing me the car keys, Rose said, "If there's any danger, contact me right away." "Thanks," I said with a small smile. Rose managed a faint smile in return. Driving Rose's new off-road vehicle, I arrived at a private restaurant. Inside one of the private rooms, I opened the door to find Sophia waiting for me. "Elizabeth?" Sophia's voice betrayed her confusion as I stepped in. I sat across from her, pulling a photo from my bag, which I placed on the table and slid toward her. "A long time no see, Sophia," I said. The picture was one I had painstakingly obtained. A shot of Sophia and Ethan kissing. Ethan, the CEO of Canoe Company, was a rising star in the self-media industry who had already stolen several major projects from the Henry Group. I had discovered the connection between Sophia and Ethan through a personal history. In my previous life, Ethan had hit me with his car and fled the scene. Sophia had been in the passenger seat. After being reborn, I investigated them both, and seeing them kiss had confirmed their relationship. Sophia's gaze lingered on the photo. "What do you want?" she finally asked. A chance to cooperate," I answered directly. Sophia straightened in her seat but avoided looking at me. I could tell she still looked down on me, only agreeing to meet because of the picture in my possession. I slid a disc across the table toward her. "I know the Henry family's obsession with male heirs. No matter what you achieve, they only see Henry." "Go on," Sophia said, her disinterest apparent. I leaned back, leaving the disc in front of her. "I've captured evidence of Henry using drugs and assaulting others. I believe you'll find it interesting." Sophia glanced at the disc, but didn't touch it. Back when Henry set up his camera, it failed to record his criminal activities, and Lucas's manipulation of evidence had ensured he avoided consequences. But I was ready this time. "You've done your homework," Sophia said, studying me intently. I had prepared thoroughly. My shirt buttons concealed cameras, which I hadn't anticipated would capture Henry's extreme actions: kidnapping, assault, and drug use. Still, I shrugged indifferently. "I'll testify in court about what Henry did." "You only need to nudge things along to get what you want," I said. Sophia tapped the table thoughtfully, but didn't agree immediately. "Nothing comes for free? What's your price?" "Your brother," I replied coldly. "I want him locked up for life." The hatred I felt toward Henry was so deep I wanted him gone forever. Sophia stared at the table, silent. Time ticked by, the only sound in the room being her rhythmic tapping on the table. "Fine. Pleasant cooperation," she said finally, standing and extending her hand. "Pleasant cooperation," I echoed, shaking her hand. That same evening, a popular media outlet released a pixelated video with the headline, "Is it fair for a kidnapper, drug user, and rapist to go unpunished while the victim suffers?" The video quickly climbed to the top of the trending topics. Just an hour later, the trending topics were suppressed, which enraged the public. People flocked to discussions, spreading the story across various platforms. As outrage grew, I published my medical examination report, proving I had been seriously injured and hospitalized. Sympathy shifted in my favor, and I released a timeline of my relationship with Henry. The evidence showed that when we met, Diana was still a minor studying in another city. Each timeline entry was backed by photos, dismantling the rumor that I had stolen my sister's boyfriend. Neighbors also came forward, sharing how my parents had mistreated me since childhood. They described how I was forced to cook, clean, and do laundry from a young age. Some neighbors even teared up as they recounted my struggles. Old classmates posted photos of me as a child, wearing worn-out short sleeves and carrying a ragged school bag. The pictures showed holes in my pants and a background indicating it was autumn, while others had already switched to warmer clothing. One revelation after another poured out, and public outrage reached a boiling point. Yet, there was still no progress in Henry's case. Conspiracy theories began circulating, suggesting a cover-up. Under immense pressure, the authorities expedited Henry's trial. While investigating his drug use, they uncovered evidence of drug trafficking. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, Henry was sentenced to death, and his appeal was denied. In a country with zero tolerance for drugs, Henry had crossed the line. The Henry Group's stock plummeted, and their products were exposed as defective. Public sentiment turned entirely against them, and even Sophia was dragged into the fallout. Henry's mother, overcome with anger, reportedly spat blood and was hospitalized. As I stepped outside to leave the hospital, I felt the warmth of the sun on my face. Someone called out to me. Come here," a passerby shouted. My best friend reached out to help me into the car. The world, I realized, can be beautiful, as long as you dare to break free.